Ever since occupation and colonialism in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, the determination of the developing countries for recovery and development in many ways has been hampered rather than helped by the developed world. It has been more than 50 years now since US President Harold Truman's post-World War II speech promising help for the citizens of developing countries in realizing their aspirations to move out of poverty. Communities have been slowly stripped of their ability to be self-sustainable and of their support system. Now many communities have already or are in danger of collapsing in the face of natural disaster or under its inability to cope with large corporations' desire for bigger profits, whatever the cost to human lives. The wheel of life that has sustained them for centuries is slowing down and ready to topple. This exploitation by ever more powerful transnational corporations leaves many developing communities as mere seeds of determination waiting for a real chance to spring to life, to show the world the true colours that nature has provided them with, their unique cultural skills, to achieve their ultimate potential as human beings and from that create a new and happier life for themselves. Unfortunately, their spring hasn't arrived and many communities now don't even produce enough food or other products to sustain themselves, let alone to sell to others in order to find a way out of poverty.
I'll change my steps and dance to a new song. I'll change my steps and dance to a new song.
My name is Kevin Murton, and my research into the trading practices of transnational corporations in the developing world during my time at Southampton University left me with a desire to search for an improved version of today's globalized trading system. Free trade, as it is better known, aspires to make all countries open their borders with the objective that companies can trade on an equally competitive basis. However, the system is far from perfect, and not only does it allow richer countries the possibility of subsidizing its own companies, which undermines the attempt of poor countries to compete, it also has no legal provision for protecting the human rights of workers in developing countries working for foreign corporations. Some would say that the governments of those countries should protect them, but many developing world governments have little choice but to accept the transnational corporations' conditions of investment or risk losing the business for their country altogether. Of course, there are some developing world governments who are not concerned with their citizens' human rights, but only their own well-being and profit. But the truth is that many transnational corporations now have a greater power born out of wealth than the majority of the least developed countries. Is there an alternative to free trade, a stepping stone for the poorest on earth to finally emerge and spring forth from the ground of poverty? In March 2004, 10 cities across the UK, including Southampton, celebrated entry into Fairtrade city status. The bananas brought on that first day were to be followed by many other shipments from the Windward Islands in the Caribbean, all under the Fairtrade trading banner. Although I understood the basic principle of fair trading to some extent, I needed an explanation as to why it was such an important day for the Windward Islands and for Southampton.
I think that day itself was a tremendous promotion. I think we'll probably never have a single day which promotes fair trade as much as that in Southampton.
Through fair trade, paying a fairly price for my bananas, I am able to give my children a better education.
Charity, for one thing, is short term, but for another thing, it rather destroys people's dignity.
We have upgraded a water system in the community so that the people in the community can have clean water. We brought computers to the schools.
I think fair trade, which enables people to use their skills, means that their dignity is maintained.
I want to encourage the consumer to buy fair trade product so that we can get the social premium and develop our community so that people in our community can move out of poverty.
I learnt that day that not only does Fairtrade ensure that each of the workers in the developing world receive a fair wage, but that the community in which they live also benefits from a social premium to pay for common assets, such as the water system that was upgraded in the Windward Islands. I decided to speak to Anne Newton further to find out more.
Justice is extremely important, and there's no justice in the way that trading is done at the moment. And if you can find a small thing which you can grab hold of and actually change, I think it's worthwhile doing. Products which they're making and exporting to us need to be products which we not only want this year, but we want next year and we want in the future. It's not just a flash in the pan. It's got to be a very long-term process, and I think that's part of fair trade.
This lack of justice or fairness in trade that Anne talked of, and the long-term sustainability issue which she spoke of as an important issue connected with fair trade, are factors which directly affect the ability for undeveloped communities to drag themselves out of poverty. However, in my research for this programme, I discovered businessmen that believe that fair trade has a negative effect on poverty in the developing world, and that free trade is the only way of ensuring a world free of poverty. In further research, it was found that this latter claim has been heard for many decades, but statistics found in the United Nations Human Development Report 2000 showed that 2/3 of people in the least developed countries still had no access to the very basic essential for survival, that being clean water. Having already visited Zimbabwe in 2002, I already knew the consequences that result from extreme poverty conditions. Community breakdown, family breakup, illness, orphaned children and child workers, and a sense of deep unhappiness and desperation. Many of the children I met had suffered exactly that, but were lucky enough to find a safe house or orphanage called the Good Shepherd Centre, shown here, which has given many children hope for the future. After Southampton became a fair trade city in March 2004, it became clear that it was important to learn more about fair trade, to see whether this kind of practice could offer a better alternative to so-called free trade, in terms of its effect on the quality of life of the workers and citizens of the communities involved in the developing world. Which is the better option for poverty alleviation and sustainability in the developing world, free trade or fair trade? I decided to follow the Fairtrade Group whilst it tried to capitalise on the success of the momentum that resulted from the media coverage of Southampton becoming a fair trade city, and also to understand and observe its objectives, its methods and its achievements. Speaking to some of the local people in Southampton on World Fair Trade Day, there was a sudden realisation as to the scale of the task that the Fairtrade Group had set for itself. What does fair trade mean to you?
People make coffee and that lot, and they don't usually get the same pay, but I think they should get the same pay, and I think that's what fair trade means. These people are trying to make a living, and it's not as easy for them out there as it is for us here.
Not a lot.
But they sell good products and try to, and the big cats take the profits.
I don't understand it.
It's just going to be another product, isn't it? But behind the scenes, I'm glad that at least they're getting paid. There's someone paying them half decent wage. So.
Have you ever bought any fair trade products?
I bought some chocolate. Yeah, I bought like food and that from school.
I've got a little leaflet here. I'm going to have a little look through. I'll shop in Asda's, and if they sell stuff in Asda's, like, then I'll have a little look.
How do you think people could be made more aware of the meaning of fair trade?
I think they need to do it in more sort of popular shops and stuff, because I think that if they do it in more popular shops, then they've got sort of more people going in them.
I think they might need some media attention, maybe advertising, things like that, because I don't think a lot of people do know about the products.
At the moment, people who go into the fair trade shops are like the older people and stuff, but if they do it in more popular shops, then young people go in them as well and all that stuff.
Yeah.
There's only one way. It's communication, isn't it? Either TV or the leaflets, that's it, mate. People, isn't it? Getting to people.
Based on these interviews then, generally it is fair to say that an understanding of fair trade is, or is perceived to be, lacking amongst the general public. And the backing of local politicians, such as local MP Alan Whitehead, could be very important if the message broadcasted by the Fairtrade Group is to be communicated. His belief was to aim at the future of the Southampton community, our children.
I think a lot of things are happening in schools in Southampton now, as far as education and discussion on fair trade. That's, I think, a very important step forward. One thing I thought was really good on Southampton as a Fairtrade City Day, there were large numbers of children, also some actually also dressed as bananas, who did seem to know a great deal more about fair trade than many of the other people who were looking on in the city. And certainly having that emphasis on the education, the awareness work that's going on in the city is very important.
So how is the Fairtrade Group furthering its objectives of creating awareness, education for the children, and developing a way of ensuring a lasting sustainability of buying in this country and producing in the developing world? Well, there's been Fairtrade fashion shows.
The T-shirt's floral design is hand screen printed onto an unbleached cotton base. This is made in Zimbabwe by designing, and part of the selling price supports an AIDS project in Harare. The screen printed cotton skirt has a side split and is designed for comfort and freedom of movement. The hand embroidery and mirrorwork details show the skills of Indian textile workers. A toy box gypsy style blouse with slashed sleeves, and a toy box cream sun cap as well. A toy box hat, a toy box bag, and she's wearing a toy box scarf around her shoulders.
Then there was the annual general meeting, backed by Councillor Dennis Harriman as Mayor.
I think it's an excellent movement. It's very dear to my heart. It's something that I've championed and been involved with. My vision is that it becomes commonplace. Most of the big monopoly producers are the ones that could be criticised, and we've got quite examples, which I won't mention, which you see down the high street. And when you look at how those products were produced, how children were exploited, how conditions were in a terrible state for those things to be produced, that's when people sit up and take notice. And we should be cancelling the debt from loads of third world countries, but encouraging them to help themselves so they can be self-sufficient.
There was the opening of the Fairtrade shop in Shirley, where hundreds of Fairtrade-only products went on sale, coming from as far away as India. Then we had open house days at Ann Newton's, where people learnt about, bought and discussed the future of fair trade. It was also here that we met retired Southampton University lecturer Dr. Bernard Carey, who was discussing the marketability of product samples with fair trade trader Elaine Mason.
If we convert that price, it would sell for about £2.25, something like that.
Right, so I think £2.50 would be, I think they would sell at that.
Yes.
Speaking to Dr. Carey was soon to become quite an inspiration. As a visiting professor, he had just returned from India, where he had spoken to an audience of 50 producers about Southampton becoming a fair trade city.
Texan companies have been trying to patent the neem tree and basmati rice. Fair trade has a lot to do with health of these people and also our own health, ultimately. The unfairly produced bananas involve spraying those crops and spraying the people living underneath them many times a year. If the world is in such turmoil today, really selfishness probably plays quite a large part.
Little did I know it at the time, but that initial meeting with Dr. Carey was to start me off on a whole new adventure, one which was going to give me a real meaning to and understanding of fair trade at a ground root and practical level.